I hope this finds the right people who are awake and are ready for the next part that's coming up. So I know not everybody understands what Archon programming is, but it's that negative speak. It's that if somebody says something to you, how you feel less about yourself. It's programming, and it's actually very easy to release it. It's simply just declaring that I release all Archon programming. And once you can do that, meditate on it. Do it for about 15 minutes where you're just repeating it to yourself, where I release all Archon programming and negativity, and just repeat it over and over and over again. It will help tremendously. It helped me an awful lot, especially today when when I first got on with my first video and, was talking about how discouraged I was. I realized that was just Archon programming that was speaking to me. The devil, however you want to look at it. But we need to find our divinity within. We allowed an entire race of people, several races of beings, to disconnect from our divinity. And we're better than that. We never should have allowed them to experiment on us like that, because that's what it is. They've been tinkering with our minds and our DNA. And we can release all of that. We just have to look within and declare that we want our sovereignty back, and you will get your sovereignty. The truth will set you free. Releasing all that's not good for you will set you free. I know family is a big thing for a lot of people, but you need to understand that not all family is blood and not all family is good for you. And you need to let them go. It's really tough. I released my entire family. I had to walk away because it was so toxic and unbearable that I simply just could not continue having a connection with them. And it hurt. It was very difficult because I love those people very much, and I hope that they find the light, and I hope that they can break themselves out of the cage that they put themselves in. But I also realize that what's good for me is not them at this time. Now, I'm not going to say that I won't ever allow them in my life again forever, but they're going to have to come correct. They're going to have to prove that they've released that toxicity. And we as a population, we need to look around and, ask ourselves, what's the change that we want to see? And then you become that. If you want a friendlier community, you need to be friendlier to your community. If you want better education for your kids, there's a good possibility that you are the one that's going to have to teach them and not leave it to the state to do that. Because state education is one size fits all. Yes, I understand. They have regular coursework, and, in a lot of high schools, they have advanced placement. So there's that, but it's definitely not going to hit the people who don't necessarily want to follow that path. And, fortunately for me, I was a very curious kid when I was growing up, and I did not rely solely on state education. I educated myself in the library. I was out in the world. I'm Gen X. So, the whole thing of, you can stay out until the streetlights came on was a very real thing for me. So, I spent a lot of time at the park. Every once in a while I spent time with friends, but, I spent a good portion of my time in the library or just down by the creekside in Hornell. And, I learned about life doing that and not solely relying on state education or what my parents were willing to teach me. I was also a very observant kid. So if I saw somebody doing something that I was really interested in, I didn't have to be right next to them to watch it. I'd watch from afar because I knew that if I got in the way that I was going to be, I was going to lose out. So there were a lot of times that I would just stand off in the distance. And, when you're a kid, your eyesight's really good. So you can pick up on a lot of stuff that, you might miss out as an adult. And so, I spent time around construction sites just learning how to run, tools that way. Of course, my father had a garage, so I learned how to use tools just through watching him. And yes, like our high school had shop in home economics, because this was back in the late 80s and 90s that I was in high school. So, I got that education. But, there's a lot of stuff that just isn't taught in school anymore because of budgetary cuts, or they just can't find the staff to do it. And so, there's a whole population out there that doesn't know how to cook well, doesn't know how to sew, doesn't know how to change a tire, doesn't know how to do taxes. So they give it to someone else to do, which is fine. It helps people create businesses and do the things that they love. But I think we can all agree that, there are a lot of shortcomings in our systems. And financial education was something that I never really got a hold of. My parents weren't rich people, they weren't wealthy people. And learning about finance has been, quite honestly, a struggle for me. And yes, I've gone out and I've educated myself on those things, but I'm definitely not up to par where I would like to be by any stretch. And, if there's a teacher out there that would be willing to sit down with me, or, if you can recommend some good videos, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it. And, because if I had followed that, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in. And I recognize that. And, we have to all be the change we want to see. We do. You can't expect everybody to do everything for you. It's not how it works. If you do see something, learn. It's not too late. It's never too late. When you give up, that's, it's not a good thing. Even if you make mistakes, that's how you grow even more. Because once you make the mistake, the chances of you making that same mistake again are almost none if you recognize it. So let's all be better stewards to our country. Let's be better stewards to our planet. I'm not saying go out and preach godly word to everybody, because I know there are a lot of people who are kind of put off by it. So you kind of have to spoon feed it to them. It's like, giving your kids strained peas for the first time, and, they take a taste of it. They make that face, and, you have to zoom it in on an airplane sometimes. You might have to mix it in with a little applesauce so it's a little bit more palatable. But, we all have to find ways to encourage people to look within and to look to God, because we lost our divinity when we allowed certain races to take over our world. And we need to be better. We need to be accountable. We need to hold ourselves accountable. If you can't even hold yourself accountable, it's a little bit more difficult to hold other people accountable. So start with yourself. Start with your family. If you have young children, let them make the choice, but also allow them to see the consequence that comes along with it instead of hovering and bulldozing. Everybody needs to learn. And every time we take those opportunities away, not only are we harming ourselves, but we're harming our kids. We all need to be better. I know that. I own that. I know there's always something that I can improve upon. But I'll leave you with that. I like to keep my videos relatively short because I know a lot of people, you have a lot of stuff going on. So it's kind of tough to watch a 30-minute video. So I try to keep them under about 10 minutes. And if I can, I try to put it in a short. But let's all come together. Let's all learn to be better. Let's all be better, more accountable for our own lives, so that when somebody does step on a line, it's easier to make them accountable too. Because we will have learned the lesson through our own, and it's easier to explain to somebody who may not have had that lesson. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day. I hope the remaining part of your weekend is great. I'm going to go down and do some stained glass for a little bit. I have a little bit of grinding to do, but whatever I'm able to make, because I don't have a lot of solder left, I'll be sure to post it for you. But thanks for watching, and thank you for supporting my channel. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Any support is appreciated, and I am trying to get to that level so that my content gets out there to more people. Thanks.